Right. At the end of the day, the average American, I think, has a very strong respect for the military as an institution. For the most part, when we talk of the military, we talk about them as a good thing. That's not to say that we agree with all the policies that the military makes, right? But this is not, for instance, a case where we mention military officers and then we roll our eyes and then we say, oh, well, that's not a career path that we want our kids going into, right? Like, going into the military is viewed in this country as, at the end of the day, a good thing. It's nothing to be ashamed about. That's not to say that hero worship is kind of the solution to Donald Trump, but if we sort of lose that norm of thinking of the military in positive terms, of thinking of the officers as a sort of cabal of equally partisan decision makers, then that's the time to truly be worried.
Another thing that I thought was interesting in the Nichols piece, even though he is focused on the president's role in escalating this civil-military assault, as he calls it, he also admits that retired military officers have not helped matters, and many of them have spoken out against Trump. Many of them have spoken out against Trump in ways that would have been unthinkable even a decade ago. There was a statement that Admiral Mullen made on our podcast in episode 3 where he was talking about his belief that retired generals and admirals should not be doing this at all. And that their comments are actually what is politicizing the military more than, say, the president's reaction to them. What do you think about that, Kevin?
I'm not sure if the silence of retired military officers or just anyone who served in the military is necessarily the solution here. If we want to have more transparency, if we want to have kind of more, if we want the American public to better inform themselves on civil-military relations in this country, you can't inform yourself with nothing. And if you're a retired general or retired officer or someone who never even served in a position of authority within the military, but just who happens to have military experience, if you stay silent, then you're essentially ceding the discussion to those who will make your talking points for you. At the same time, though, I completely am sympathetic to this notion that anything you say can be weaponized and used against you, even when you're not trying to make a partisan claim. So this is one of those scenarios where there are really no good options that I'm aware of. I don't think it is probably a good idea from an academic perspective and from someone who cares about sort of improving our knowledge of civil-military relations if retired military personnel don't say anything. But I'm aware that position comes with many, many drawbacks.
It's like a fine line, because on the one hand, you have kind of what Corey Shockey gets to a lot, that if you have personnel who were in the military or who are retired using their voices and saying their own opinions, it kind of shows that, veterans and service members are not all that different from American society. And that's good for civil-military relations because, you see that the military isn't all that foreign to you. They're just like us. On the other hand, though, right, you mentioned how you need to be careful because anything you say can be politicized. Anything can be made partisan. And in that regard, that can be dangerous for civil-military affairs because people are now using your words and making them political and associating that military context with it.
And especially dangerous, I think it's especially dangerous when you have retired flag officers weighing in on subjects that don't necessarily have anything to do with their own military careers, right? When General McChrystal is asked basically to weigh in on Donald Trump's character, that's a lot different than General McChrystal being asked to talk about his experiences as a high-level military officer or commanding troops in Afghanistan. He's essentially being put in a position where he has to use his own credibility that he earned through his military career to then speak on a topic that isn't necessarily within his purview.
At the same time, though, we as voters make decisions on policies that we probably don't have a lot of experience with. When I vote for a candidate, I try to do my research. I try to be informed. But I'm also aware that I'm voting for someone who's going to be doing things, who's going to be passing laws and policies that I have absolutely nothing about. I don't need to have experience with all the intricacies of congressional law in order to vote for a congressman or representative. And so it's not entirely clear to me if it's fair that we sort of hold members of the military to an even higher standard, in the sense that, well, you can only talk about things that you actually have experience with, because we're all working with imperfect information here.
Because we're all learning about these topics together, Nick and I generally try not to inject our opinion into these episodes, but we'd like to make one point before we finish today. If you read Professor Nichols and Professor Owen's articles, the ones we summarized earlier, you'll find that both of them start out by noting that, quote, Americans don't often think about civil-military relations, and that that's a good thing, or a sign of a healthy polity. In Professor Owen's words, it means that paratroopers aren't normally seizing communication centers, and tanks aren't rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue towards the Capitol. We understand what they're trying to say, and we do encourage you to read their full articles, which are linked in the show notes. However, while we are certainly fortunate to live in a country where we don't worry about military coups, we respectfully disagree with the suggestion that it is good that Americans don't think about civil-military relations. The only way we sustain healthy democratic norms is by thinking about them and talking about them, instead of taking them for granted, as we Americans are often too prone to do.
So, from the Thank You for Your Service team at the University of Chicago, thank you for taking the time to think about civil military affairs with us. Please be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast app. And connect with us on Twitter at TYFYS_podcast. This podcast is produced by Haz Yano, Aishwarya Kumar, and Mary Martha Maclay. Our creative consultant is Sarah Claudy, and our publisher is David Raban. This podcast is a production of the University of Chicago Public Policy Podcasts and is in no way intended to reflect the official positions of the Department of Defense or any other military entity. I'm Nick Paraiso.
And I'm Thomas Krasnican. Please join us for our next episode, when we'll talk to retired General Stanley McChrystal himself to get his thoughts on his career, military policy making, and the current state of civil-military relations.
Hi, this is Jason Zukis, the host of Have You Heard? The UC3P News Quiz. Curious to know what our show's all about? Here, have a listen.
Iceland has fielded a surprisingly successful team in recent World Cups. Iceland's coach, Heimar Hallgrímsson, has a skill set not limited to just soccer, however. Which of these things does he not do on the side? A. Work part-time as a dentist. B. Dress up as an Icelandic troll during Christmas time. Oh boy. Or C. Sell car insurance to friends and family.
Oh, man. I feel like he definitely does the troll thing. Like, I'm pretty sure. I wouldn't be shook if he was a dentist. I'm going to go with car insurance.
That's correct. He does not do that.
If you enjoyed that clip, come check out all of our episodes by searching for Have You Heard? UC3P on your preferred podcast platform. Or join one of our upcoming live shows. Just go to facebook.com/HYH News Quiz for more info on our next show. See you there.